And all of you know why. Why? Or there may have been a number of reasons. I mean, I'm not saying there had to be one reason. In other words, I don't know if any of you are, well, you're not as old as I am, so, but maybe you still remember Milton Berle. And how did Milton Berle always put it? Wah hoppin', right? So, wah hoppin'. See, he's still, Uncle Milty's still bringing on laughs. Okay, so what happened? Mike.
Cheap and easy credit.
Yes. In other words, what happened was the Federal Reserve depressed interest rates. And the Federal Reserve depressed interest rates obviously because a huge portion, a vast majority of expenditures on new homes is financed by mortgage credit. And the cheaper it is to borrow, the easier it is to buy a home. And so the Federal Reserve pushed interest rates down into the basement, and that encouraged borrowing. Now that's interesting because this was always a standard technique of the Federal Reserve when it comes to fighting recession. In all of the past recessions, the Federal Reserve forced interest rates down in order to stimulate the economy. But maybe it was Joanne, I forget. But what was different about this recession? This recession was that in this recession, the home sales had not dropped. Yet the Federal Reserve did what it had always done before, you see. And so, did it work? It worked wonderfully. Home sales went up. But it isn't this time that they recovered, because in the past they always had this time they went to where they had never gone before. Right? Now, it wasn't just that. There was something else. There was some piling on. And this is something we also know all about. What else happened during 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? It wasn't just that in the early years, at least up to 2004, that the interest rates had been forced down into the sub-basement. But what else happened? In other words, did the lenders become more finicky about whom they loaned to or less? Lot less, right? And so we have all these innovations that we've all heard about, right? Like lending money to people who really have very little possibility of ever paying back, right? All those innovations which we've associated with the subprime loans. All that happened, and then we know about the securitization of the mortgages. In other words, the mortgage originators, they didn't hang on to the mortgages. They were all packaged up as securities and sold all over the world. All those kind of things made it all happen, and they helped. But the prime mover here was those low interest rates. And let me just focus on that another moment. You see, in the past, and we'll return to this many times, in the past, the recessions were associated with plunging home sales, as you can see. This time it wasn't the case. This time it was a technology. And of course, forcing interest rates down doesn't necessarily boost technology and raise technology upward. But the Fed did it anyway. And even though the dot-com bust had really nothing to do with low interest rates or high interest rates, the Fed went ahead and did what it had always done anyway. Any questions about that? Mara.
Yeah, so why?
Well, why? Excuse me, like I said, I'm getting over a cold. Because it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Even though
Well, but you see, we have the wisdom of hindsight. Now, what would have been the alternative? The alternative would have been to say, well, this time it's different, and we really ought not to do this. And there would have been such an uproar that everybody on the Federal Reserve Board would have been lynched. So it would have been impossible not to let the interest rates drop. It would have been out of the question.